Hey everyone, welcome back to Anti-Blue Falcon. Listen, I got a couple of new updates to bring to everyone, so just stick with me through this one. I'm going to tell you some really good stuff that came out of that and some stuff that could be a little bit aggravating. So the VA had a Senate hearing yesterday, and they dropped some wild numbers. They talked about a 60% drop in the claimed backlog in the 1 year since the new administration went in. But before we start celebrating, there's also been some hiring freezes, facilities that can't staff up, and some policy changes that affect women veterans. That's not all. Trump signed a new housing bill that nobody's talking about. It's huge for TDIU veterans who have been recently screwed by income caps when trying to get housing assistance. Plus, there's an update to the AUTO Act. You can now get another vehicle grant every 10 years instead of just once in your lifetime. So here's what we're all thinking. The VA is a mess. Nothing ever changes. Actually, some stuff is changing pretty fast. The question is whether it's helping you or not. Now let's start with the Senate hearing because this is where things get really interesting, real fast. So Senator Kramer came from North Dakota, brought in these huge posters to the hearing. First one showed the claims backlog. When Secretary Collins took over from the Biden administration, there was about 264,000 claims sitting in the backlog. Now, 1 year later, they're down to 105,000. So that's a 60% reduction. Now, we're all thinking, how the hell did they pull that off? Now, Kramer asked that question. Secretary Collins said it came from the VBA side, basically saying we can do better than this, and they did. They didn't just cut the backlog. They also dropped the total claims in the pipeline from over 1 million down to around 550,000. Now, they did this while also reducing the average processing time from 135 days to 80 days. So your claim is getting decided faster and the line is just getting a little shorter. So that's a win-win for everyone. But there's some more good stuff. The second poster showed that 25 new VA clinics opened across the country in the past year. 25, that includes 2 new clinics in North Dakota, one in Williston and one in Grand Forks. Those towns are like 330 miles apart. That tells you how spread out some rural veterans are spread out there. Now this ties into something important. Senator Kramer is pushing this bill called the Critical Access for Veteran Care Act. And what it does is let veterans in rural areas go to local critical access hospitals or rural health clinics instead of driving hundreds of miles to a VA facility. Now, North Dakota has about 30% of these critical access hospitals, but only 5 communities that also have a VA clinic. That's kind of insane when you think about it. You got a hospital right there in your town, but you got to drive 3 hours to see the VA. Now, Secretary Collins and the VA under Secretary both said they support this idea. They want to lease space in these local hospitals, which helps the hospital stay open and helps you get care where you actually live. That's a double win. So that's the good news. Backlog is way down. Wait times dropped from 135 to 80 days. New clinics are opening. Mental health wait times for established patients are averaging around 6 days nationally now. It all sounds great, right? Now listen, if you put in a new claim recently, tell us in the comments how long you've been waiting to get back from the VA. And what has everyone been experiencing for mental health wait times? Because the VA is saying one thing, but I want to hear what's actually happening out here in the real world. All right, so where things get a little interesting because they're bragging about shorter wait times and new clinics, but they're also doing something that directly contradicts some of that stuff. They're cutting staff, hiring freezes, mandatory overtime for the people that are still there. In some of these brand new facilities, they can't even hire anyone to work in them. If that doesn't make any sense to you, you're not alone. So let me kind of explain what's going on. The VA is reorganizing everything under this thing called the RISE initiative, Restructure for Impact and Sustainability Effort. What this actually means is that they're cutting the number of regional offices from 18 down to 5. They're saying it's to reduce bureaucracy and get rid of unnecessary layers. I agree. Okay, so I agree with that. It sounds reasonable until you hear the rest. Since January 25, the VA has shed between 30 to 40,000 employees. Now, the Secretary Collins said that there are no layoffs, that these just are vacant positions they're not filling. But that's the problem. Some of these aren't pencil pusher jobs. Senators brought up that actual healthcare providers are leaving or getting pushed out. And they opened a brand new 30,000 square foot facility in Yuma, Arizona. It's supposed to open in 2027, but because of the hiring caps, they can't hire any new staff for it. So they have to pull people from other hospitals that are already understaffed. So you see the problem here, you build a new clinic, but you can't staff it. So you just reshuffling around the same overworked people. Now, speaking of overworked employees are now facing mandatory overtime. Some are being forced to work 80 hours per pay period just to keep up with the workload. That's burnout waiting to happen. And when your healthcare providers are burnt out, guess who's going to suffer? We do. Now, the VA's defense is that they hired too many people after the PACT Act passed in 2022. They thought there'd be this massive surge of vets needing care because of the burn pit exposure stuff. And that surge didn't really happen the way they expected. They got a 6% increase in workload, but hired 14% more personnel. So now they're trying to correct for that. That's fine. But here's where senators started pushing back. They said the doctors and nurses aren't overhead. They're not bureaucrats sitting in an office shuffling papers. They're the ones actually treating vets. And if you cap their hiring, you're directly limiting the VA's ability to provide that care. So Senator Hassan from New Hampshire said it straight up, the doctors and nurses aren't that overhead. And Senator Moran from Kansas, who chairs the committee, said after the hearing that he's worried these caps are too rigid. If a facility needs more staff, they should be able to adjust fire. Then there's the wait time issue. Now, the secretary said the national average for a new mental health appointment is about 19 days, except senators came back with their own numbers showing wait times of 50, 60, even 70 days at specific facilities. In Arizona, the average was 51 days for a new mental health appointment. That's about 3 times what Collins is claiming nationally. So who's right? Probably both. National averages can look great while specific facilities are drowning. That's the problem with these big government organizations. You lose the ability to see where things are actually breaking down on the ground. All right, and so we got a couple more things. Women veterans, the VA reinstated a near total ban on abortion services. Even in cases of rape or incest, the VA won't provide any services. The only exception is if the mother's life is threatened. That's affecting over 460,000 women veterans of reproductive age. So, I'm not here to speak about it. If you're a woman veteran, then leave it in the comments. What do you think of this policy change? Let us hear from you. Okay, and then actual more good news is the AUTO Act that I brought up earlier. This thing is huge if you need a specially adapted vehicle. Before this law, the VA will only give you one time to buy a vehicle. That's it for your entire life. The grant is currently $27,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize some of these modified vehicles cost anywhere from $20,000 to $80,000. And the average lifespan of a modified vehicle is about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. So veterans would get their grant, buy a van, drive it for 15 to 20 years until it literally fell apart. Then they were stuck paying $50,000 out of pocket for a replacement one because they already used their one-time benefit decades ago. The AUTO Act fixes that. Now you can get that vehicle grant every 10 years if you haven't received one in 30 years. You can apply right now. After that, it's every 10 years. This law was inspired by a Vietnam vet from Maine named Neil Williams, who drove his first VA-funded vehicle over 250,000 miles until it fell apart. He paid $50,000 out of pocket for his replacement van, and that shouldn't happen. So who qualifies? You need a service-connected disability that includes loss of your feet or hands, vision problems, severe burns, ALS, same eligibility as before. The only thing that changed is you can now get the grant multiple times instead of just once. And one more bill that's not getting enough attention. President Trump just signed the Disabled Veterans Housing Support Act. This one specifically for TDIU veterans. It solves if you're TDIU, you can't work. So you're income capped. You're trying to survive on that VA compensation pay, which is hard enough. But when you apply for housing assistance through HUD or community development grants, they count your VA disability compensation as income. So even though you can't work, you're getting disqualified from housing programs because your disability check puts you over the income limit. This new law excludes VA disability compensation from those calculations. So if you're TDIU and you need help affording housing, your VA compensation doesn't count against you anymore. That's a big deal, especially if you live in expensive areas. This is a great bipartisan bill, great for our vets who have severe injuries. So it passed the House, passed the Senate, and President Trump signed it, so it's a law now. So that's great. So the bottom line here is the VA is a mixed bag of things going on now. I think a lot of great things are coming. Some few quirks. Hopefully they're able to work it out. Those claims processing faster. New clinics are opening up. New laws are giving veterans more options for those vehicles and housing opportunities. But at the same time, we're cutting staff, capping hiring, and I think some of us are aware that some of the staff at the VA are veterans themselves, so we can imagine some vets have lost their jobs. So if you've been to the VA recently, have you experienced less wait times between appointments? Have your services gotten better or worse? Leave it in the comments. I think people would want to hear that. Let us learn from those results, because the VA can say whatever they want to say in a Senate hearing, but what matters is what you're actually experiencing out there. Also, I want to tell you, everyone, that I started my own site. It's antibluefalcon.com. The link is at the bottom. I'm adding new content daily. There's a VA math calculator, CRC calculator, discounts, scam alerts, state benefits, news updates, and I'm consistently evolving the site. I'm new to this, so be patient with me. So check it out. No signing up or anything. It's a one-stop resource. That's all I got. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.